Streaming live across the country, tackling the topics everyone is talking about online. Share, engage, and interact. This is Newsfeed Now.
Good Monday morning, everyone. It is August 3rd, and I'm Hillary Hunt, your host, and this is Newsfeed Now. It's a show where we're going to take a look at all the stories creating a buzz on social media, but let's get right to it. Everyone talking about Tropical Storm Isaias off the East Coast. Isaias actually weakened into a tropical storm over the weekend, luckily sparing much of Florida from the major impacts as it stayed offshore. We have team coverage this morning, but let's begin with meteorologist Pat Walker from Little Rock, Arkansas. And Pat, what's it looking like right now?
Well, the latest observation coming in from the National Hurricane Center still has Isaias as a tropical storm with maximum possible winds up to 70 miles per hour. It is moving a little faster, around 13 miles per hour toward the north, and it's just northeast, about 100 miles northeast of Jacksonville, Florida right now. And over the weekend, as you mentioned, Hillary, it was a tropical storm. It was in an environment of a lot of wind shear, and that did a lot to tear apart things of Isaias. But now, still in that wind shear, but is now moving into some very warm waters known as the Gulf Stream. So that's probably at least helped it to maintain its same strength at 70 miles per hour. And also, it could be a chance where this actually does become a hurricane again before making landfall. So here's the track right now as it moves north, 13 miles per hour. It's going to head close to Charleston, South Carolina, and probably make landfall right around Georgetown, or the Georgetown Lighthouse, just up the coast a little bit from Charleston, between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. So Georgetown's right there. It's probably going to make landfall tonight around 8 o'clock Eastern time, then make its way through the Grand Strand of South Carolina into parts of North Carolina. So really those locations were the places where we'll see the worst effect. Now, we already are seeing some heavy rainfall at times coming in bands into Charleston now, all the way down to coastal Georgia, Savannah, down into northeast Florida. However, that's on the left side of the track. The worst side of a hurricane or tropical storm is always going to be on the east side, which the east side is out in the Atlantic Ocean. That's good news, obviously, for the Florida coast, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina coast. But once it does make landfall, well, then you're basically right in the center of that path. Now, one thing we'll be watching for today in parts of Georgia and South Carolina are some of these bands that would have a severe weather potential, meaning a tornado potential with a lot of turning of winds with height. Of course, we have tropical storm warnings off the coast of Florida from Daytona to Jacksonville to Savannah, Georgia, all the way up to around Charleston. But just north of Charleston, from around Georgetown all the way through Myrtle Beach to Wilmington and up to Surf City, North Carolina, a hurricane warning is in effect, where we could see those winds gusting up to 75 miles per hour when this does come ashore, hits shore later on this evening. Now, one thing to be watching for around Georgetown and maybe even Murrells Inlet, South Carolina, is the potential for a storm surge of 3 to maybe 5 feet. Farther north, it may be only around 2 feet. And really from Charleston southward, storm surge is not going to be a big issue, which is obviously some good news, but some very heavy flooding rainfalls will be the case for this, leading to a lot of urban and street flooding. All right, not just down here in the Carolinas, though, but tropical storm warnings all the way up to Long Island. That means we could see tropical storm force winds as late as Wednesday of this week, which means winds over 39 miles per hour. So here's the track off the coast of Florida and southeast Georgia now, going to go through the Carolinas tonight. By around this time tomorrow morning, we're going to be watching that storm in northern Virginia, maybe in the D.C. area, heading up through the Delmarva, and then eventually by Wednesday, we're up in the Canadian Maritime provinces, and it'll be gone out of the U.S. But again, tropical storm Isaias, maximum sustained winds of 70 miles per hour, about 110 miles northeast of Jacksonville, could become a hurricane before it makes landfall this evening in South Carolina.
Pat, really hitting on the Carolinas there. Thanks so much. And, you know, they're bracing for Isaias as that storm inches closer to making landfall. Let's bring in our Olivia Parsons, who's at the Isle of Palms in South Carolina. And I can see those heavy winds are blowing your hair all over right now. Beachgoers already off the beach.
Right now, we're starting to see some of those rain impacts all morning long. It's been pretty dry and very minimal in terms of what we've been seeing along the coast here, but now we're starting to see that rainfall, and I'm going to show you kind of what the strong surf looks like this morning. You know, all morning long we've been hearing waves crashing down. We've been seeing them. You know, this is just what we've been seeing the last couple of hours. We do, as the meteorologist mentioned, we do expect a storm surge. When tropical storm Isaias is expected to make that landfall sometime later this afternoon, obviously rip birds are a big issue right now. It's still pretty moderate really heavy winds we're dealing with, but other than that, nothing too severe as of yet.
And Olivia, really quickly, we can hear the wind blowing in our phone right there, but the city, this is no stranger for you guys. You guys are used to these types of storms coming in, so the preparations have been well underway.
Last couple of days, obviously, as this storm was approaching, we've been taking several measures to make sure that everybody's prepared because, yes, we are typical. We do see storms, and because we're, in low-lying areas, flooding is something that's very prevalent along the coast, but especially along our beach cities. So the city has opened up parking garages so that people can park. We've done sandbag distributions and things of that nature. Just getting ready for it because even though it did die down to a tropical storm, we're still going to see those impacts of flooding and such. So it's better to be prepared and to have and not need than to need and not have.
That's right. Thanks so much, Olivia. Stay safe out there. And we're thinking about the Carolinas during this time. Turning now to the coronavirus. It's a start of a new month, but with the same old problem. Most states seeing a week-over-week rise in test positivity for COVID-19. It's a real strong indicator of how rampantly the virus is spreading. And some officials fear the U.S. still doesn't have a real grasp on this pandemic. John Lornick reports.
There are more than 4.6 million known coronavirus infections in the U.S., according to Johns Hopkins University. That accounts for more than a quarter of the cases worldwide.
We are constantly having to remind people that they may be tired of the virus, but the virus is certainly not tired of us.
Not only is the virus not tired of the U.S.,
we are in a new phase.
Dr. Deborah Birx with the White House's Coronavirus Task Force says COVID-19 is more widespread now compared to earlier this year.
No matter where you live in America, you need to wear a mask and socially distance, do the personal hygiene pieces.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's new forecast predicts nearly 20,000 more COVID-related deaths by August 22nd. That breaks down to close to 1,000 deaths per day between now and then.
We haven't controlled this virus in a serious way. We're seeing rises in a lot of states, and now we're talking about reopening schools and colleges in the midst of that, which I think is just going to compound our problem significantly.
And some health experts say stay-at-home restrictions may be necessary.
More serious measures need to be taken in order to flatten the curve, to bring back a phrase that we used widely months ago, but don't use so much now.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
This is something a lot of people are watching. Negotiations on a new coronavirus stimulus package. They continue today between lawmakers and White House officials. Congressional leaders are expected to meet with the Trump administration officials to resume those discussions. Swift bipartisan agreement seems unlikely. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin dug in on their opposing positions on Sunday.
The president wants us to get a deal done quickly because this is important to the American people. Now, I would just say across both parties, there are different things that are very contentious. The Democrats right now are insisting on over $1 trillion to the state and local governments. That's something that we're not going to do to bail out those states that had financial issues. But there's definitely areas of agreement. Things like the PPP, I think there's enormous bipartisan support. Things about checks in the mail, I think there's enormous bipartisan results. So Mark Meadows and I will be back there every day until we reach an agreement.
Let's bring in our Jesse Turner from Washington, D.C. And Jesse, everyone is watching this. A lot of people hoping for a second stimulus to come. Where are they at on this?
Yeah, so it sounds like as far as negotiations go, really these stimulus checks are the least contentious part of the negotiations. Democrats and Republicans can both agree that Americans need this second round of stimulus checks. Right now, they're just trying to iron out the exact amount and who exactly they would go to. Right now, it's sounding like Mnuchin is saying that the president does support the exact same average amount, so that $1,200 check. But both sides do agree on expanding that to more people. At first, children couldn't get it, adult dependents, like college kids, who are also struggling right now during this pandemic financially. And so there's negotiations continuing right now over that and how to make the money available to them. But Mnuchin is saying if Congress is able to pass this, I can essentially send these checks out the next week.
And, do you think this is the week where they, come to an agreement and actually iron this out?
This is the week that definitely all eyes are on them just because they're about to go into recess this next week, the Senate is. And so really time is of the essence, of course, for a lot of families across the country. And so they're really trying to get this wrapped up. But Other points of contention are that unemployment insurance, that $600 weekly benefit that was going out to a lot of Americans who have lost their jobs, and other points too that they still haven't been able to agree on.
And okay, Jesse, this is a little off topic, but I want to know about TikTok. President Trump and TikTok, a lot of people watching this, is he going to ban TikTok? What's being said on Capitol Hill right now?
Yeah, the president's tweeting about it, and it's looking like it could start moving in that direction. We wouldn't be the first country to do it. And even some of the biggest social media companies were on the Hill just last week. And so that it's definitely gotten the president's attention. And yeah, we'll see what potentially happens later on.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for joining us, Jesse. Well, let's talk a little bit about space. Mission accomplished. Astronauts from SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule are safely back on Earth after completing their historic 2-month journey. The capsule plunged through the Earth's atmosphere and deployed parachutes on Sunday. Then it made a splashdown off the coast of Florida. Crew members are the first astronauts NASA has actually sent into orbit in 9 years. They're the first humans to ever do so on a commercial aircraft. Talk about an accomplishment. I'm just happy when I get to brush my hair in the morning, but they are some successful people. Let's bring in our SpaceX expert and, of course, space-loving friend Ed Bloodsworth from Mobile, Alabama. When are you going to space? That's my question.
When I can afford the six-figure price tag.
That's a good one. But okay, so tell us a little bit about this. A lot of people were watching SpaceX. This is a huge deal for the NASA community.
This is the first splashdown by an American spacecraft in 45 years. And what made this so historic is the fact that it's a private company that did this. And this is the future of space, these government-private partnerships with companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, United Launch Alliance, and all these other companies. Those are going to be the names you're going to hear about over the next couple of years as our reach into space expands with the help of private ventures.
And explain, people who don't understand the splashdown, explain that, because I mean, we just saw it on camera. That's wild when you sit there and watch it.
Well, a lot of folks who will harken back to the old Saturn V Apollo days back in the 60s and 70s, the concept is basically the same, where you have a pod which falls out of orbit, or in this case is actually pushed out of orbit by what they call a deorbit burn. It comes into the atmosphere, a heat shield is exposed, and the temperatures get up to around 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit upon re-entry, and that causes the pod to slow down, the capsule, and they had 2 sets of parachutes deploy, which continue to slow it down. So give you an idea of the speed, when it comes into, starts its reentry, it's moving at 17,500 miles per hour. When it splashes down, it's moving at 25 miles per hour. So it's quite an amazing feat, and it's a lot of things have to go right for a successful splashdown, and that's what we had yesterday.
That's wild. And then you look, they have to go way out into the middle of the ocean, away from everyone. I mean, there was no one around that except the people who were there a part of it.
Yeah, they had the Coast Guard form a 10-mile radius around the splash site. But one problem that they did run into, and the folks at SpaceX acknowledged this, is when the Go Navigator ship came to actually lift the capsule out of the water and allow Bob and Doug to exit, there were a lot of unauthorized boat traffic that started to come in on the actual ship, and the folks at SpaceX acknowledged that and saying that they're going to have to do a better job next time to prevent that from happening, because that does actually present a safety concern for all the crew members who are out there as well as the astronauts.
A lot of moving parts to make that happen. Ed, I'm going to start a GoFundMe so we can get you that 6-figure price tag so you can suit up and go to space for us.
I'll look for it. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And before we go, let's talk about something kind of cool. 92% of water, that's what they are. They can weigh more than 200 pounds, and they were bred for sweetness. You probably guessed it. Check it out. They're watermelons. August 3rd is dedicated to this perfect summer snack. Watermelons actually originated from South Africa. Most melons were originally bitter, but growers cultivated them to create more flavor. And despite their name, watermelons actually aren't scientifically categorized as other melons. Instead, they share some of the characteristics of gourds. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go get some watermelon. I'm going to enjoy it, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be right back here tomorrow. We'll see you then.